Resuming debate, the honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's always an honour to rise in this House and speak on behalf of the wonderful constituents in Calgary-Midnapore. And today we find ourselves in a situation of privilege. I'll just briefly review the timeline of events. On June 10th, the House adopted a motion calling for the production of various documents related to SDTC to be turned over to the RCMP for review. Of course, we've also referred to this as the Green Slush Fund. This is what you at home would know this as. In response to the motion adopted, departments either outright refused the House order or redacted documents turned over citing provisions in the Privacy Act or Access to Information Act. Nothing in the House order contemplated for redactions or necessitated redactions. The House enjoys the absolute and unfettered power, or it should, to order the production of documents that is not limited by statute. These powers are rooted in the Constitution Act of 1867 and the Parliament of Canada Act. In a response to the failure to produce documents, our Conservative House Leader, the member for Regina Capel, raised a point of privilege, arguing that House privilege had been breached due to the failure to comply with the House order. Then, on September 26th, the Speaker issued a ruling on the point of privilege raised and found that the privileges of the House had, in fact, been breached. Now, Madam Speaker, I wish I could say that this is the first time that this type of privilege has been breached, but we have come to see that it is a practice of this government to not hand over the documents, to withhold documents, not only from this House, we've seen this in committee as well. It's a tactic of this government, and it is actually an action which obstructs democracy because it does not allow us access to the documents, the Canadian public access to the documents, in this case the authorities, access to the documents so that they can review the information in full to act upon it and for Canadians to decide upon it. And this is, of course, why this government, this NDP Liberal government, this past 9 years, refuses to hand over documents. This is why they do it, because they want to withhold information. They don't want to be judged on this information, because certainly it would be found damning. What other reason could there be? They're simply trying to hide something, but this is not a new practice for this Liberal NDP government. I'll name some examples, Madam Speaker. The carbon tax. We had a situation where the Liberal government was declining to release its internal analysis of economic impacts of carbon pricing and refusing to say why it was keeping the data secret, even as it criticized the federal budget watchdog for an error in its analysis of the policy. And I have behind me our wonderful Shadow Minister for Natural Resources, the incredible member from Lakeland, and I know that she has dealt with this specifically in her work, that she has faced obstruction of information relative to carbon tax pricing and relative to the natural resources sector. So she will remember this, and she will understand this, this has taken place several times before, and that's just the first example where data was withheld on the impacts of carbon pricing. And why? Why? It's the same reason that we are not having the carbon tax election right now that Canadians want so badly, is because this government has withheld information on the carbon tax because they don't want to be judged upon it. It would just give Canadians more information and more reason to distrust them, to not feel confident in how they're running this country. And it's evident for them when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the fuel pump, when they pay their heating bill every year, and not just families, businesses, community organizations. But this is one example. The second example I will give of this withholding documents, Madam Speaker, we've seen, is in the Foreign Interference Review. Here we have an article that states Liberals blocking access to 1,000+ documents, says Intel Oversight Panel reviewing foreign interference. Another reason that this government wants to hide these documents is a result of, again, democracy, fairness in our elections. I'm actually quite concerned about the carbon tax election when we have it. The wonderful member today from Wellington, Halton Hills, thank you so much, was attempting to speak today, and actually members of the government were chastising this individual for speaking up against foreign interference. Foreign interference when it was his family who was targeted, his family, and I'm getting sneers from the government benches as a result of me calling this out. But this is what happens when you have a government that doesn't want to release information to the Canadian public, to the House of Commons. It's disgraceful, Madam Speaker, but here we have another case again with foreign interference where the government did not want to release the documents, as we are seeing here with the Green Slush Fund and the SDTC handing over of documents. So very disturbing. The next one, Madam Speaker, an issue that is very close to my heart, the ArriveCan issue. The previous speaker, the member for Cypress Grasslands, mentioned some of the main characters out of the ArriveCan scandal. But this is another situation where, in the Committee of Government Operations, a committee that is accountable to oversee the spending of the government, to review how funds are going to be spent and have been spent, were withheld documents. And I have here a Globe and Mail article. I know that the government loves to quote Globe and Mail articles, so I'll quote one at this time. Canada Border Services Agency misses deadline to hand over ArriveCan invoices, declines to identify subcontractors. And you may have seen earlier in the House today, Madam Speaker, I was very pleased to share the information with the House, with Canadians, that the procurement ombudsman has in fact decided to undertake a review of the bait and switch practices of this government to ensure that Canadians are getting value for money and that subcontractors of government contractors are acting in alignment not only ethically but for the best value for dollar for Canadians. That's some other good work that we are doing here in the House of Commons. But again, it's so difficult because this work is obstructed in the effort to obtain documents. So to expand upon this article, it says here, and Bill Curry always does a wonderful job of covering these scandals of the government, the Canada Border Services Agency has missed a committee-ordered deadline to hand over outsourcing invoices, i.e. documents, related to the ArriveCan app. And the agency president told MPs Monday that she couldn't provide a timeline for handing over the documents. And that's another mechanism that we see with this government is, you know, it's almost like a form of gaslighting where someone won't come out and say, no, you're not getting the documents. You believe that the documents are coming, that if you're patient, if you wait, the documents will arrive, when in fact, the intention is for the government never to actually deliver these documents. That's exactly it. Thank you very much, colleagues. So, you know, this is another mechanism that this government uses to obstruct democracy, obstruct the good functioning of this House, of committees, to ensure that Canadians have an opportunity to review the work that we are doing and to judge all of the information for themselves, as they will soon do in a carbon tax election, Madam Speaker. I'll move on to the next example, Madam Speaker, where documents were withheld by this government to the House of Commons and to Canadians, the Winnipeg Labs. Who can ever forget this shameful NDP Liberal cover-up, where we had documents withheld of the most serious of national security scandals, detailing Beijing's infiltration of Canada's highest security lab. The Prime Minister defied 4 orders of Parliament and took the House of Commons to court, in fact, to block the release of these documents. You know, it's actually, as the Shadow Minister for the Treasury Board and a former public servant, I'm saddened and I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed when I see public servants consistently having to wear the poor ethics and the incompetence of this government. And that was a perfect example of this, Madam Speaker, with the Winnipeg Lag documents, where they dragged up a top health bureaucrat to the bar and admonished him when really, again, it was the government trying to hide, trying to avoid handing over, as we see here in this case, in this point of privilege here today, the documents. Another situation where we were denied documents as a result of this government not wanting to be truthful, wanting to obstruct. And this SDTC situation here today, the Green Slush Fund, is just another example of that, Madam Speaker. Another one, Madam Speaker. My colleague, the member for Cypress Grasslands, referred to the SNC Lavalin scandal, a horrible scandal, and absolutely, as my colleague mentioned, I would really recommend for anyone to read the testimony of the former Attorney General and Justice Minister of Canada, Indian in the Cabinet. I think that this would be very valuable reading for Canadians to just have an insight from someone who was actually an insider who had to participate in the dirty work of this type of governance and just decided this isn't for me, and actually made the choice to leave this government because she could see the obstruction of justice, the obstruction of democracy, the obstruction of functioning in this House as a result, well, in that case, of many things, but here today of not handing over the documents. But also relevant to that era, because we're in a new era of scandal now, aren't we? Yeah. Yes, but from that same, it's always a new scandal. It's like Taylor Swift eras. This is the Green Slush Fund era, exactly right. And we've exited the Arrive scam era. We're in the Green Slush Fund era. But this is from the SNC, exactly. This is from the SNC Lavalin scare era, where they did not produce the documents for. Oh, too bad. I was hoping that all members of the Liberal government would have a chance to hear this. In particular, the minister who was particularly implicated. But this is the We Charity. The We Charity. This is what I am getting to. Is the We Charity, where again documents were not handed over, obstructing justice. So, the government released thousands of pages of documents related to the We matter. Oh, congratulations. As the committee requested last month. But rather than have the independent law clerk redact the information, and that's a key word there, Madam Speaker, independent law clerk, such as cabinet confidences and personal information, the various departments responsible for this program did the blackouts themselves, an apparent contravention of the committee's request. Madam Speaker, the committee requested the documents unredacted. This again is how we evaluate completely all of the information. Is when there are no redactions, we are able to read it in its entirety, the information that is there to present to Canadians. Canadians are permitted, in many cases, to read the documents in their entirety. But here we have a situation again with the We Charity scandal, where documents were presented and were redacted. Information only known to public servants who red-penciled out the material. That's scandalous. Not even a Sharpie, Madam Speaker. Red-penciled out the material. Yes, a spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office told CBC News that the redactions were done by the parliamentary law clerk who was following the committee's direction to remove documents and personal information. But that law clerk said in a confidential August 18th letter, which also happens to be my wedding anniversary and my father's birthday, to the clerk, thank you very much, of the Finance Committee, that the vast majority of the blackouts had been done by government bureaucrats. No. Like, not a surprise at all, Madam Speaker. So again, it is no surprise that we find ourselves in this situation today, that documents have been held back, because that's what this government does, right? They hold back information because they don't want us to have the information. Members of the official opposition, they don't want us, I say, a collective us, to have the information, and they don't want Canadians to have the information. Madam Speaker, I have one more example, Madam Speaker, of the government holding back information, and this was relative to not even the latest Governor General scandal. Of course, the trip that she recently took to Quebec, where it seemed that she has not been able to achieve a level of competence in our deuxième langue officielle, our second language, despite committing to take classes. I'm actually referring to her predecessor, who was even mirrored in more conflict and more scandal, Julie Payette. And I will say, when I served as consul to Dallas, Texas, I did audit Ms. Payette's invoices because she was based out of Houston. We have a problem at that time, and I don't ever recall any discrepancies, but this is information relating to documents that were held back relative to the former Governor General. The public accounts list the $277,592. That's an easy number to say, Madam Speaker, because I'm used to reading them in like the millions and getting to the billions now, as going to 5 claimants whose names are withheld due to publication exemption. Oh, another excuse to withhold information, another excuse to not provide information like we are seeing here today with withholding the documents. This document provides no comprehensive breakdown of how the money was spent or even what type of claim was settled. Further details are not available for the line item in question, said a spokesperson for the Office of the Governor General. The Privy Council Office also declined to comment and referred all questions to Rideau Hall. Not surprising, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, again, I wish I could say that this is just the first instance where we have seen documents be withheld, but no, this is a pattern. This is a pattern that we have seen time and time again, where information has been withheld from Canadians, from the official opposition, because again, this government doesn't want us to have this information to further examine and to bring light to these issues to Canadians. And the irony is incredible, because the Prime Minister has always said sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let the sun shine in, Madam Speaker. Allow these documents to be brought forward to the RCMP, to the House, to whatever committees, bodies require them for evaluation and use, so that the correct actions can be taken and the Canadian people can decide. Now, Madam Speaker, another tactic that we have seen this government use, which is being used here again in this situation, is that, oh, this is an arm's length organization, that, you know, as the government is, oh, just wash our hands of it, because this is an arm's length organization. No mea culpa. But we have seen this before. We saw this, for example, with the former Minister for Transport, when we had the resumption of travel after the pandemic, and the minister refused to take responsibility as the Minister of Transport for the actions of CATSA. We all know CATSA. We go through the airport. We do what is required to allow safe and productive travel within our nation as Canadians. But not only did he blame Canadians, but he actually said, no, this is an arm's length organization. And so, we don't have to worry about this. We have seen this type of behavior time and time again, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, in addition to withholding documents, saying organizations are arm's length, we could go on and on about the situations where this government has avoided responsibility. Sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces, wildfire risks to Jasper, Madam Speaker, informing the public about Luke Magnotta, passports onslaught. I'd love to talk to the government onslaught, passports onslaught, not delivered passports. I'd love to talk to the House Leader, government House Leader, more about that. Madam Speaker, Aristotle said, character is revealed through actions. This government, through their actions, has revealed their character. Yes. They want to obstruct democracy. They want to obstruct oversight. We're not going to let them do it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.